There are places on Earth that archaeologists still can't fully explain. Ancient monuments carved from solid rock, forgotten cities hidden beneath forests, underground temples, and mysterious structures that continue to challenge everything we think we know about the past. These aren't myths or legends. They're real discoveries that have been excavated, studied, and debated by researchers for decades. Yet many of them still have no clear explanation. Tonight, we'll travel across the ancient world, uncovering remarkable places that history has never fully understood. Some were built thousands of years ago. Others remained hidden until modern archaeology finally brought them back into the light. If you enjoy exploring ancient mysteries, consider subscribing. And before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, let's begin with a mysterious monument carved into solid granite in the ancient valley of Asuka, Japan. Giant steps of Asuka, Japan. Hidden among the quiet countryside of Japan's Nara prefecture, where rice fields stretch between wooded hills and small villages have stood for generations, there is a monument that seems completely out of place. It isn't a temple. It isn't a castle. And it isn't a mountain shaped by nature. Instead, it's a single massive block of granite, carved with enormous steps, perfectly cut corners, and flat surfaces that seem almost too precise to be accidental. For centuries, people have stood before it asking the same question. Who carved these giant steps, and what were they actually meant for? Today, this remarkable monument is simply known as the Giant Steps of Asuka. Yet despite decades of archaeological study, its true purpose remains one of Japan's most enduring mysteries. The village of Asuka occupies a special place in Japanese history. More than 1,300 years ago, this peaceful valley served as the heart of an emerging kingdom. Powerful clans built palaces here. Important political decisions shaped the future of Japan. Buddhism first spread through the region. New temples appeared across the landscape. Much of Japan's early history began in this very valley. Yet among all these well-understood monuments, the giant steps remain different. They don't seem to fit comfortably into the story. The monument was carved directly from a single granite outcrop. It rises several meters above the surrounding ground, with broad terraces carefully cut into its surface. Each level appears remarkably flat. Sharp edges separate one platform from another. The craftsmanship is unmistakable. Whoever created it possessed exceptional skill. This wasn't a rough stone broken apart by chance. It was deliberately shaped. Every cut required planning. Every surface demanded patience. Even today, the precision remains impressive. At first glance, the stepped design almost resembles an unfinished pyramid. Some visitors compare it to an enormous staircase leading nowhere. Others believe it resembles the foundation of a monument that was never completed. Standing beside it, it's easy to imagine ancient workers carefully removing layer after layer of solid granite. But why? That question has never received a definitive answer. One popular theory suggests the monument may have served as the base of an important structure, perhaps a ceremonial platform, perhaps part of a royal complex. Wooden buildings once dominated ancient Japan. If such a structure stood here, it would have disappeared long ago, leaving only the stone foundation behind. Unfortunately, archaeologists have found very little evidence proving this idea. No surviving pillars, no clear architectural remains, only the carved stone itself. Another possibility is that the monument held a ceremonial purpose. The Asuka period marked a time of enormous religious change. Ancient traditions blended with newly introduced Buddhist beliefs. Sacred landscapes became increasingly important. Large carved stones often played symbolic roles in rituals connected to rulers, ancestors, and the natural world. Perhaps these giant steps formed part of a ceremonial space where important gatherings once took place. If so, those ceremonies have left almost no trace behind. There is another feature that continues to puzzle researchers. Unlike many famous monuments, the giant steps contain no inscriptions, no names, no dates, no symbols identifying the people who commissioned the work. It's unusually silent. Many ancient builders wanted future generations to remember their achievements. Here, nothing speaks. The stone offers no explanation, only carefully carved surfaces that have survived more than 1,000 years. The mystery becomes even greater when the surrounding landscape is considered. Asuka is home to several unusual carved stones, each with its own unanswered questions. Some feature mysterious holes. Others display geometric patterns unlike anything found elsewhere in Japan. Together, they suggest that the valley once held traditions we still do not fully understand. The giant steps may have been only one part of a much larger ceremonial landscape whose full story has been lost. If that's true, much of that story still lies hidden beneath the fields surrounding the village. Modern archaeology has provided valuable clues, but not complete answers. Careful surveys have mapped every surface of the monument. Researchers have studied the tool marks left in the granite. They've compared its design with other ancient Japanese sites, yet no single explanation has convinced everyone. Some believe it was never finished. Others argue it was completed exactly as intended. Without written records, both possibilities remain open. Today, the giant steps continue to overlook the quiet Osaka countryside much as they have for centuries. The forests surrounding the valley change with the seasons. Cherry blossoms bloom each spring. Autumn colors sweep across the hills. Visitors quietly climb the nearby paths, stopping to admire a monument whose meaning has outlived the people who created it. Perhaps it once supported a magnificent structure that vanished long ago. Perhaps it served as a sacred place where ceremonies welcomed a new age in Japanese history. Or perhaps its true purpose has simply been forgotten. Whatever the answer, the giant steps of Osaka remind us that history doesn't always leave clear explanations. Sometimes, it leaves only the stone, patiently waiting through the centuries for someone to ask the right question. Puzzle stones of Silistani, Peru. On a lonely peninsula overlooking the deep blue waters of Lake Umayo, where cold winds sweep across the high plains of southern Peru, stands one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in the Andes. Most visitors come to see the towering stone burial monuments, massive cylindrical towers that have watched over the landscape for centuries. But hidden among those famous structures, there is another mystery that often goes unnoticed. A collection of carefully shaped stones, cut with astonishing precision. They fit together so perfectly that they almost resemble pieces of a giant stone puzzle. Even today, they continue to leave archaeologists asking the same question. Why was such extraordinary precision necessary? Silistani was built by the Kala people, who occupied this region before it later became part of the expanding Inca Empire. For them, this wasn't simply a cemetery. It was a sacred landscape. The towering burial structures, known as chulpas, were built to honor important members of society. Many stood several meters high, carefully constructed from massive blocks of volcanic stone. From a distance, they appear simple. But the closer you walk, the more remarkable the craftsmanship becomes. Some of the stones seem almost impossibly well-shaped. Their surfaces are smooth. Their edges meet with extraordinary accuracy. Instead of using identical rectangular blocks, the builders created stones with many different angles. Some have 6 sides, others have 8. A few contain even more. Yet despite these irregular shapes, they fit together with astonishing precision. No large gaps. No obvious mistakes. Each stone seems to lock naturally into the next, forming walls that have survived earthquakes, storms, and centuries of harsh mountain weather. This style of construction is often called polygonal masonry. It appears at several famous sites across Peru, including Cusco and Ollantaytambo. But here at Silistani, its purpose seems especially intriguing. These weren't defensive walls protecting a city. They surrounded sacred burial monuments. That raises an important question. Why devote so much effort to structures built for the dead? Clearly, these towers meant far more than simple tombs. Archaeologists believe the Kala people viewed death very differently from the modern world. The ancestors remained an important part of daily life. Important individuals continued to watch over their families and communities long after death. Building strong, carefully crafted monuments may have reflected both respect and spiritual belief. Every precisely shaped stone represented more than engineering. It represented memory, honor, and permanence. The builders wanted these monuments to endure, and judging by what still stands today, they certainly succeeded. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't the finished walls. It's how the stones were prepared. Many of the blocks weigh several tons. Each had to be quarried, transported across uneven ground, carefully shaped, and finally positioned without disturbing the neighboring stones. The builders had no iron tools, no cranes, no powered machinery, only stone hammers, patience, experience, and generations of accumulated knowledge. Even today, replicating this level of craftsmanship would require extraordinary skill. Researchers continue debating exactly how such precision was achieved. Some believe the stones were repeatedly placed together, marked, removed, and reshaped until every surface matched perfectly. Others suggest highly skilled master stonemasons relied on techniques passed down through generations. Whatever method they used, it required remarkable patience. One small mistake could ruin weeks of work. Yet across the entire site, mistakes are surprisingly difficult to find. Silistani also occupies one of the most beautiful settings in the Andes. The burial towers overlook Lake Umayo from a high ridge, where the surrounding landscape stretches toward distant mountains. It is difficult to imagine that such a location was chosen by chance. Many ancient civilizations carefully selected places where the natural world held spiritual meaning. The Kala were likely no different. The lake, the mountains, and the open sky may all have formed part of a sacred landscape connecting the living with those who came before them. In that setting, the carefully fitted stones become more than remarkable engineering. They become part of a much larger story. Centuries later, the Inca expanded into this region and incorporated Silistani into their growing empire. Some archaeologists believe they repaired or even completed portions of the site using their own exceptional stoneworking traditions. If so, the puzzle stones standing today may represent the combined craftsmanship of two remarkable civilizations. Exactly where one tradition ends and the other begins is still debated. Today, the winds continue to sweep across the shores of Lake Umayo. The ancient towers still rise above the hills, and the perfectly fitted stones remain exactly where their builders placed them centuries ago. Visitors often run their fingers across the narrow joints, searching for gaps that simply aren't there. Perhaps the builders perfected a technique that has largely been forgotten. Perhaps they simply possessed a level of patience few people can imagine today. Whatever the answer, the puzzle stones of Silistani remind us that some of history's greatest achievements aren't always the largest. Sometimes, they're hidden within the smallest details. A perfectly shaped stone, carefully fitted beside another, creating a monument that has quietly resisted the passing of time for hundreds of years. And even now, those silent stones continue to challenge our understanding of what ancient craftsmen were truly capable of. Carved caves of Barabar Hills, India. Rising above the plains of eastern India, the granite hills of Barabar appear quiet and unremarkable. Scattered trees cling to the rocky slopes. Birds circle overhead. From a distance, there is little to suggest that these ancient hills contain one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. But hidden inside the solid granite are caves unlike any others ever created. Not because of their size, not because of hidden treasure, but because of the astonishing precision with which they were carved. More than 2,000 years ago, someone transformed some of the hardest rock on Earth into perfectly shaped chambers with walls so smooth that they still reflect light today. Even now, archaeologists continue asking the same question. How was this possible? The Barabar Hill Caves were carved during the Mauryan Empire, around the 3rd century BC, during the reign of Emperor Ashoka and his grandson Dasharatha. Unlike natural caves formed by water or volcanic activity, these chambers were carved entirely by human hands. Solid granite, one of the hardest stones available, was slowly cut away until elegant rooms emerged from the mountain itself. That achievement alone is remarkable, but it is only the beginning of the mystery. Step inside one of these caves, and something immediately feels different. The walls are unbelievably smooth. Not simply well carved, but polished until they resemble dark glass. Light reflects across the stone. Even after more than 20 centuries, the surfaces remain almost mirror-like. Visitors often reach out instinctively, expecting to feel rough granite beneath their fingers. Instead, they find an astonishingly smooth finish, one that would challenge even skilled modern stoneworkers. Perhaps even more remarkable is the sound. Speak a single word inside the chamber, and it lingers. Every whisper echoes across the polished walls. A simple clap can fill the room with rich, rolling reverberations. The caves almost seem designed to amplify sound. Whether that effect was intentional or simply the result of remarkable craftsmanship is still debated. Some researchers believe the unusual acoustics may have played a role in religious ceremonies held within these chambers. Historical inscriptions provide one important clue. Several caves were dedicated to the Ajivikas, an ancient religious community that flourished alongside early Buddhism and Jainism. Very little survives from the Ajivika tradition today. Most of what we know comes from the writings of other religious groups. The caves may have served as places of meditation, teaching, or spiritual retreat. If so, their quiet isolation would have made them ideal sanctuaries. The polished walls, the carefully proportioned chambers, and the remarkable acoustics may all have contributed to an atmosphere of reflection and silence. Yet one mystery continues to stand above all the others. How were these interiors polished so perfectly? Granite is incredibly difficult to shape. Modern builders rely on hardened steel tools, diamond-cutting equipment, and powered polishing machines. The craftsmen of the Mauryan Empire possessed none of those technologies. They worked with iron tools, abrasives, patience, and extraordinary skill. Exactly which techniques they developed remain uncertain. Some researchers believe fine sand mixed with water slowly wore the stone smooth over countless hours. Others suggest natural abrasives combined with careful polishing methods now lost to history. Whatever the process, the results remain extraordinary. The precision extends beyond the polished walls. Many of the chambers feature graceful curved ceilings carved directly into the granite. Corners meet with remarkable accuracy. Doorways were carefully shaped without weakening the surrounding rock. Every surface appears intentional. There is little evidence of hurried work, no obvious mistakes. Only careful planning carried out with astonishing confidence. The builders understood both the stone and the limits of their tools, perhaps better than we fully appreciate today. Over the centuries, the Barabar hill caves have inspired generations of visitors. Travelers from across India describe their unusual appearance. Modern engineers continue studying their construction. Some have even suggested the caves influenced later rock-cut architecture throughout India, including the magnificent cave temples carved centuries afterward. If that is true, these quiet chambers may represent the beginning of one of the world's greatest architectural traditions. Today, the caves remain remarkably well preserved. Visitors climb the same granite hills that ancient monks once ascended. Sunlight pours through the entrances before fading into cool stone chambers hidden within the mountain. The polished walls still catch the light. The echoes still drift through the silent rooms. And the questions remain exactly where they have always been. How did ancient craftsmen achieve such perfection? How many years did it take? And what knowledge disappeared with the people who first carved these remarkable spaces? Perhaps future discoveries will reveal the techniques they used. Or perhaps the answer has already been lost forever. Whatever the truth may be, the carved caves of Barabar Hills remind us that some of humanity's greatest achievements are not found in towering monuments or vast cities. Sometimes, they are hidden inside a mountain, patiently waiting for the next visitor to step into the silence and wonder how such extraordinary craftsmanship was ever possible. The Sonic Temple of Malta. Beneath the streets of modern Malta, hidden below an ordinary neighborhood, lies a place unlike anywhere else on Earth. It isn't a natural cave. It isn't an abandoned mine. And it wasn't built by the Romans or the Egyptians. Instead, more than 5,000 years ago, someone carved an entire underground temple directly into solid limestone. Room by room, hall by hall, level after level, creating one of the oldest underground monuments ever discovered. Today, it is known as the Al-Saflieni Hypogeum, but many people know it by another name, the Sonic Temple of Malta, because deep within its ancient chambers, sound behaves in a way that still fascinates scientists today. The hypogeum was discovered entirely by accident in 1902. Construction workers digging the foundations for new homes suddenly broke through the roof of an underground chamber. At first, they believed they had uncovered nothing more than an ordinary cave. But as archaeologists explored further, they realized they had stumbled upon something extraordinary. The passages continued. New rooms appeared, then more. By the time the excavation was complete, an entire underground complex had emerged. 3 separate levels, carved entirely by hand, covering more than 500 square meters beneath the earth. No one knows exactly who built it. The monument dates back to around 4000 BC, making it older than Stonehenge, and even older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its builders left behind no written language, no records, no names, only carefully carved stone chambers connected by narrow corridors and stairways disappearing into the darkness. Every room seems deliberate. Nothing appears random. The deeper archaeologists explored, the more remarkable the site became. Among its many chambers, one room stands apart from all the others. It is known simply as the Oracle Chamber. At first glance, it seems relatively small. But the moment someone speaks inside, something remarkable happens. A deep voice doesn't simply echo, it resonates. The sound rolls through the surrounding chambers with surprising strength. Researchers studying the room found that certain low frequencies naturally vibrate throughout the underground complex. A voice spoken in the right tone can be heard far beyond the chamber itself. Even today, the effect is unmistakable. Why was the room designed this way? That question remains unanswered. Some archaeologists believe the unusual acoustics were entirely accidental. Others think the builders intentionally shaped the chamber to amplify sound during ceremonies. If that's true, imagine standing underground more than 5,000 years ago. The only light comes from flickering oil lamps. A priest begins speaking. His voice suddenly fills the surrounding chambers, seeming to emerge from every direction at once. For those gathered there, the experience would have been unforgettable. The hypogeum also served another important purpose. Excavations uncovered the remains of thousands of individuals carefully placed within its chambers over many centuries. This wasn't simply a temple. It was also a sacred burial place. Families returned generation after generation, bringing their dead into the underground sanctuary. The exact rituals performed there have been lost, but the combination of ceremonial spaces and burials suggests the monument played a central role in the spiritual life of prehistoric Malta. Life, death, and remembrance all existed beneath the same stone roof. The architecture itself continues to impress modern engineers. Many chambers imitate the design of buildings that once stood above ground. Curved ceilings, carefully carved doorways, decorative details shaped directly into the limestone. It almost seems as though the builders wanted to recreate an entire world beneath the earth. Some walls still preserve traces of red ochre decoration applied thousands of years ago. Even in darkness, beauty mattered. Modern researchers have carefully studied the unusual acoustics of the Oracle Chamber. Experiments have shown that certain vocal frequencies create powerful resonance throughout parts of the monument. Exactly what significance that held for its builders remains uncertain. Did they discover the effect by accident? Or did generations of experience teach them how to shape stone to influence sound? Without written records, we may never know. The chamber continues to guard that secret, just as it has for more than 5 millennia. Today, only a limited number of visitors are allowed inside the hypogeum each day. The fragile underground environment must be carefully protected. The same cool air still fills the chambers. The same silence surrounds the ancient passageways. And deep within the Oracle Chamber, a single human voice can still awaken echoes that have lingered beneath Malta since long before recorded history. Perhaps the builders understood the remarkable acoustics better than we imagine. Perhaps they simply created a sacred place where sound became part of the ceremony. Or perhaps the true purpose of the sonic temple disappeared with the civilization that carved it. Whatever the answer, the Haile Selassie hypogeum reminds us that some of humanity's greatest achievements were never meant to reach toward the sky. Instead, they were carved quietly beneath the earth, waiting thousands of years for the modern world to discover the silence and the extraordinary sound hidden within it. The hidden grid beneath the Amazon. For centuries, the Amazon rainforest was seen as one of the last truly untouched places on Earth. An endless sea of green stretching across South America, dense forests, towering trees, rivers winding through landscapes that seemed almost impossible to explore. Many believed that before European explorers arrived, only small groups of people lived here. The rainforest was thought to be too difficult, too unpredictable to support large civilizations. But beneath that vast canopy, the forest had been hiding something extraordinary. Not for decades, not for centuries, but for thousands of years. The discovery didn't begin with archaeologists carrying shovels into the jungle. It began with lasers. Using a technology known as LIDAR, researchers flew aircraft above the rainforest, sending millions of laser pulses through tiny gaps in the trees. Most of those beams reflected from leaves and branches, but some reached the ground below. When the vegetation was digitally removed, an entirely different landscape appeared. Straight lines, perfect squares, massive circles, long roads stretching across the forest, entire settlements that no one had seen from the ground. It was as though the jungle had been quietly protecting an ancient world all along. One of the most surprising discoveries was the remarkable order of the landscape. Many of the earthworks followed precise geometric designs. Some formed enormous circles. Others created squares connected by straight avenues extending for hundreds of meters. Several sites appeared carefully aligned with one another, suggesting that they were part of a much larger network rather than isolated villages. From the air, the pattern almost resembled a giant map hidden beneath the trees, a landscape planned with remarkable care. Not by nature, but by people. Archaeologists soon realized these weren't simple clearings. Many sites contained raised platforms, defensive ditches, ceremonial spaces, and carefully engineered roads connecting neighboring communities. Some roads remained astonishingly straight, even across uneven terrain. Others linked settlements separated by several kilometers. The more researchers searched, the more discoveries appeared. Thousands of ancient earthworks have now been identified across different parts of the Amazon basin, and every year, new ones continue to emerge. The discoveries have transformed how historians understand the ancient Amazon. Rather than scattered communities living in isolation, the evidence suggests that large populations once shaped the landscape itself. They managed forests, built villages, created fertile agricultural soils, constructed roads, and organized enormous communal building projects. This wasn't a wilderness untouched by human hands. It was a carefully managed environment, maintained over countless generations. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery is not how these settlements were built, but why they disappeared. When European explorers entered parts of the Amazon during the 16th century, many of these great communities had already vanished. Some researchers believe devastating diseases introduced from overseas spread far ahead of direct contact, causing populations to collapse before Europeans even reached many settlements. Others think environmental changes, conflict, or shifting trade networks may also have played a role. The truth is likely complex. The forest slowly reclaimed abandoned villages. Roads disappeared beneath vegetation. Earthworks faded beneath centuries of fallen leaves, until eventually, almost no visible trace remained. One remarkable feature found at several sites is the presence of terra preta, often called Amazonian dark earth. Unlike the naturally poor rainforest soils, this rich black earth was created by ancient communities through the careful addition of charcoal, organic waste, and other materials over many generations. Even today, it remains far more fertile than the surrounding ground. It is one of the clearest reminders that the people who lived here didn't simply survive in the rainforest. They transformed it. Their influence continues beneath the soil long after their settlements disappeared. The scale of these discoveries continues to grow. Every new LIDAR survey reveals additional villages hidden beneath dense vegetation. Some archaeologists believe thousands of sites may still remain undiscovered. Entire regions of the Amazon have yet to be scanned. What lies beneath those forests remains unknown. The next flight could reveal another settlement, another network of roads, or another chapter in a story that has barely begun to emerge. Today, the rainforest still covers much of this ancient landscape. From the ground, you might walk beneath towering trees without realizing an enormous ceremonial plaza lies just beneath your feet. Birds sing overhead. Vines wrap around ancient earthworks. The forest has become both guardian and storyteller, protecting these forgotten places until technology finally allowed us to see through the canopy. Perhaps the hidden grid beneath the Amazon was once home to thriving civilizations connected across hundreds of kilometers. Perhaps countless more settlements still remain concealed beneath the trees. Whatever future discoveries reveal, one thing has already become clear. The Amazon was never simply an untouched wilderness. It was a landscape shaped by human hands, its greatest monuments hidden not beneath stone, but beneath one of the largest forests on Earth. And even today, the jungle continues to keep many of its oldest secrets. The Uffington White Horse, England. High above the rolling countryside of southern England, where green hills stretch toward the horizon, there is a figure so enormous that it can only truly be understood from the sky. From the ground, it almost disappears. Visitors standing beside it see only bright white chalk beneath their feet. A curved line here, a long trench there. Nothing that immediately resembles an animal. But from above, a striking image suddenly emerges. a horse. Long, elegant, and unlike any other ancient monument in Britain. For more than 3,000 years, this mysterious figure has watched over the landscape. Known today as the Uffington White Horse, it remains one of Europe's oldest and most puzzling works of prehistoric art. The horse stretches across the hillside for more than 100 meters. It wasn't painted onto the grass. It wasn't built from stone. Instead, its creators carved deep trenches into the chalk beneath the soil. Those trenches were then filled with brilliant white chalk, creating a figure that stood out dramatically against the surrounding green hillside. Even today, the contrast is unmistakable. From miles away, the horse appears to race across the hill itself. Yet despite its enormous size, no one knows exactly why it was created. For centuries, people believed the figure might have been connected to medieval legends. Some even suggested it celebrated the victory of King Alfred over invading armies. It was a popular story, but archaeology eventually revealed something far older. Modern dating techniques showed that the Uffington White Horse was created during the Late Bronze Age or Early Iron Age, roughly 3,000 years ago. That discovery completely changed its story. The horse wasn't medieval at all. It had already stood on the hillside for well over 2,000 years before King Alfred was even born. Its design is unlike almost every other horse carved into the English landscape. Most later hill figures attempt to look realistic. The Uffington horse does something entirely different. Its body is formed from graceful sweeping curves. Its legs are impossibly long. Its head is small and sharply defined. Rather than copying nature, the artist created something almost abstract. Yet somehow, it still feels unmistakably alive. Even modern designers admire its simplicity. Few prehistoric works of art appear so elegant using so few lines. But perhaps the greatest mystery is why prehistoric people invested so much effort creating something that could barely be seen from nearby. The horse only reveals its full shape from high above or from distant hills. Did its creators understand that? Was the figure intended for people, or for something else entirely? Some archaeologists believe it marked an important tribal territory. Others suggest it represented a sacred symbol connected to religion or seasonal ceremonies. There are even theories that it honored a powerful deity whose name has long since disappeared from history. Without written records, every possibility remains open. Keeping the horse visible required remarkable dedication. Grass grows quickly across chalk hillsides. Without regular maintenance, the brilliant white figure would slowly disappear beneath soil and vegetation. For thousands of years, generation after generation carefully cleaned and restored the trenches. This tradition became known as scouring the horse. Entire communities gathered to remove weeds, replace fresh chalk, and preserve the monument for future generations. That tells us something important. Whatever the horse originally meant, it remained deeply significant for centuries. People protected it because they believed it deserved to endure. The surrounding landscape adds another layer to the mystery. Nearby stands an ancient hill fort known as Uffington Castle, along with prehistoric burial mounds and ceremonial sites scattered across the countryside. Clearly, this was already an important place long before written history arrived in Britain. Some researchers believe the White Horse formed part of a much larger sacred landscape where rituals, gatherings, and seasonal celebrations once took place. Perhaps the horse wasn't an isolated monument at all. Perhaps it was one piece of a much larger story that has almost completely vanished. Today, the Uffington White Horse still races across the hillside just as it has for 3 millennia. The seasons change around it. Snow briefly covers its bright outline each winter. Wildflowers bloom nearby every spring. And thousands of visitors climb the hill each year to see one of Britain's oldest surviving artworks. Yet despite centuries of study, the horse refuses to reveal its greatest secret. Who first imagined carving such an enormous figure into the hillside? What message were they trying to leave behind? And why has that message survived, while the people who created it have almost completely disappeared from history? Perhaps those answers are gone forever. Or perhaps the White Horse has already told us everything it was ever meant to say. It simply speaks in a language carved into the landscape itself, a language that has endured for more than 3,000 years, while patiently waiting for someone to finally understand it. The Buried Colosseum of Africa. Across the dry plains of central Tunisia, where olive groves stretch toward the horizon, stands a monument so enormous that it seems almost impossible to belong there. At first glance, many visitors think they're looking at Rome's famous Colosseum, the towering arches, the massive stone walls, the endless rows of seating. everything feels strangely familiar. But this isn't Italy, it's North Africa. And for centuries, much of this extraordinary monument disappeared beneath layers of earth, drifting sand, and the growing town that slowly surrounded it. Today, it is known as the Amphitheater of El Gem, one of the greatest Roman monuments ever built, and one of the most remarkable archaeological survivors in the ancient world. Nearly 1,800 years ago, this region formed part of the Roman province of Africa. Far from being an isolated frontier, it was one of the empire's richest territories. The surrounding land produced vast quantities of olive oil, grain, and other valuable goods that were shipped across the Mediterranean. Prosperity transformed the city. With growing wealth came enormous ambition. Its citizens wanted a monument that reflected their importance. The result was an amphitheater unlike anything North Africa had ever seen. Construction began during the 3rd century AD. Built from warm golden limestone, the structure rose nearly 40 meters above the surrounding landscape. Its oval shape measured more than 140 meters across. At full capacity, it could hold around 30,000 spectators. That made it one of the largest amphitheaters in the entire Roman Empire. Only Rome itself possessed a larger one. For a city so far from the imperial capital, it was an astonishing achievement. Inside, the arena once echoed with the sounds of enormous crowds. Gladiators entered through vaulted passageways beneath the seating. Wild animals were brought into the arena through carefully designed underground corridors. Public spectacles filled entire days. To the Roman world, these events were demonstrations of power, wealth, and imperial authority. Every stone was carefully positioned to create a building that was both impressive and enduring. Even today, its remarkable engineering continues to inspire architects. Yet the monument's story did not end with the fall of Rome. As centuries passed, the empire disappeared. Trade routes shifted. The city gradually declined. Earthquakes damaged parts of the structure. Stone blocks were removed to build nearby homes and defensive walls. Wind carried sand across abandoned sections. New buildings slowly grew around the ancient arena. Little by little, parts of the amphitheater disappeared from view. For generations, people lived beside the ruins without fully appreciating the scale of the monument hidden beneath them. Archaeologists later uncovered buried passageways, staircases, and sections of the lower levels that had remained protected beneath centuries of accumulated earth. These hidden spaces revealed how carefully the amphitheater had been designed. Complex corridors allowed gladiators, workers, and animals to move unseen beneath the arena floor. Massive arches distributed the enormous weight of the seating above. Every passage had a purpose. Every chamber reflected the remarkable planning of Roman engineers. The more researchers uncovered, the more extraordinary the monument became. One of the most fascinating mysteries surrounding El Gem is why such a monumental structure was built in a city that was far smaller than Rome itself. Some historians believe local leaders wanted to demonstrate their loyalty and prosperity by constructing one of the empire's greatest public buildings. Others suggest fierce competition between wealthy Roman cities encouraged increasingly ambitious projects. Whatever the reason, the decision required enormous resources. Thousands of workers, millions of carefully shaped stones, years of planning, all devoted to creating a monument that still dominates the landscape nearly 2,000 years later. Walking through the amphitheater today, it's easy to imagine the countless generations who passed beneath its towering arches. Roman officials, merchants, gladiators preparing for battle, children watching the games for the first time. Then, centuries later, travelers crossing silent ruins slowly reclaimed by sand. Every generation left its mark, yet the monument itself endured, quietly waiting beneath layers of history until archaeologists revealed much of its hidden story once again. Today, the Amphitheater of El Gem remains one of the best preserved Roman monuments anywhere in the world. Sunlight pours through its ancient arches just as it did 18 centuries ago. The arena is silent now. The crowds have vanished. Only the wind moves through the empty corridors beneath the stone seats. Perhaps future excavations will uncover even more of what still lies buried beneath the surrounding town. Perhaps the greatest discoveries have yet to be made. Whatever the future holds, the Buried Colosseum of Africa reminds us that history is rarely lost forever. Sometimes, it simply waits beneath the earth, patiently preserving its greatest stories, until the moment the world is ready to uncover them once again. The Standing Idols of Quiriguá, Guatemala. Deep within the tropical forests of eastern Guatemala, where towering trees cast long shadows across the jungle floor, stand a group of ancient monuments unlike anything else in the Maya world. They aren't hidden beneath the earth. They weren't discovered inside forgotten tombs. For more than 1,000 years, they have remained exactly where they were first raised. Silent, unmoving, watching the jungle slowly grow around them. Some rise more than 10 meters into the air. Others weigh close to 70 tons. Even today, they are among the tallest stone monuments ever carved by the ancient Maya. This remarkable place is known as Quiriguá, and despite decades of study, its towering stone idols continue to raise extraordinary questions. More than 1,300 years ago, Quiriguá was a thriving Maya city positioned along one of the most important trade routes in Central America. Merchants carrying jade, obsidian, cacao, and exotic goods passed through this region on their journeys between distant kingdoms. Although the city was smaller than famous Maya centers like Tikal or Copan, it occupied a strategic location that brought both wealth and influence. Its rulers wanted the world to remember their achievements. They chose to record that history, not on paper, but in stone. Across the ceremonial plaza, enormous sandstone monuments still stand exactly where Maya craftsmen placed them centuries ago. These monuments are known as stelae. At first glance, they resemble towering statues. But look more closely, and every surface is covered with astonishing detail. Kings wearing elaborate ceremonial clothing, sacred symbols, ancient calendar dates, rows of beautifully carved hieroglyphs. Every side tells part of a story. Together, they form one of the greatest historical records ever left behind by the Maya civilization. The largest of these monuments is truly extraordinary. Known today as Stela E, it stands more than 10 meters tall and weighs an estimated 65 tons. It remains the tallest freestanding stone monument ever created by the ancient Maya. Standing beside it, its scale is difficult to comprehend. The carvings continue from top to bottom with incredible precision. Every feather, every ornament, every symbol was carefully shaped using stone tools alone, without iron chisels, without modern machinery, and without mistakes. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't the carving itself, it's the journey. The sandstone used to create these monuments came from nearby quarries. Even so, moving blocks weighing dozens of tons across muddy ground would have been an enormous challenge. The Maya had no wheeled transport for heavy construction, no horses, no oxen. Everything depended on human strength, careful planning, and remarkable engineering. Exactly how hundreds of workers lifted these monuments into their perfectly upright positions remains uncertain. No written instructions describing the process have ever been found. The carvings themselves tell fascinating stories. Many celebrate the reign of one ruler in particular, Kaktilif Chan Yopat. Under his leadership, Quiriguá achieved something almost unimaginable. Although it had once been dominated by the powerful city of Copan, Quiriguá eventually defeated its former ruler and gained independence. That victory transformed the city's history. Soon afterward, the enormous stelae began appearing across the ceremonial center. Some archaeologists believe they were more than historical records. They were public symbols of power, monuments announcing that a small kingdom had become a force in its own right. Yet many mysteries remain. Why were the monuments carved with such extraordinary detail when much of that detail could only be appreciated from nearby? Did ordinary people fully understand the complex hieroglyphic inscriptions? Or were the towering idols intended primarily for ceremonies honoring kings, ancestors, and the gods? The Maya viewed stone monuments as far more than simple markers. They believed important events could be preserved within them. Each carving connected the present with the sacred past. Each monument became part of the living memory of the city itself. Over the centuries, the jungle slowly reclaimed Quiriguá. Trees grew between the monuments. Roots spread beneath ancient plazas. The city disappeared beneath dense vegetation until explorers rediscovered it during the 19th century. Remarkably, many of the towering stelae were still standing. The forest had hidden them, but it had also protected them. Their carved faces continued watching over the silent ruins, waiting for the modern world to read the stories written across their stone surfaces. Today, the Standing Idols of Quiriguá remain among the greatest masterpieces of Maya art. Visitors walk quietly through the same plazas where kings once celebrated victories more than 13 centuries ago. The jungle still surrounds the ancient city, Birdsong echoes between the towering monuments. Sunlight filters through the trees, illuminating carvings that have survived countless seasons. Perhaps future discoveries will reveal exactly how these enormous stones were raised. Perhaps hidden inscriptions still lie buried beneath the surrounding earth, or perhaps some mysteries will remain forever locked within the sandstone itself. Whatever the answer, the Standing Idols of Quiriguá remind us that history isn't always written in books. Sometimes, it is carved into stone so carefully that even after 1,000 years, it continues telling its story to anyone willing to stop, look closely, and listen. The vaulted tunnels under Knossos. On the island of Crete, where the mountains meet the blue waters of the Mediterranean, stands the ruined palace of Knossos. For more than a century, it has fascinated archaeologists from around the world. Its colorful frescoes, its grand staircases, its maze of hundreds of rooms. Everything about the palace speaks of a civilization that was centuries ahead of its time. But beneath those famous ruins, another world exists. A quieter world, one hidden beneath layers of stone. A network of vaulted passages, narrow corridors, and underground chambers that has inspired questions for generations. Some believe these hidden spaces helped give birth to one of history's greatest legends, the legend of the labyrinth. The Palace of Knossos was the political and ceremonial heart of the Minoan civilization, one of Europe's earliest great cultures. Around 4,000 years ago, thousands of people passed through its enormous courtyards every day. Merchants arrived with goods from distant islands. Craftsmen filled workshops with bronze, pottery, and finely painted ceramics. Priests carried out sacred ceremonies. The palace wasn't simply a royal residence. It was a thriving city contained within a single monumental complex. Yet what visitors see today is only part of the story. Beneath the courtyards and grand halls, archaeologists uncovered an intricate system of underground spaces. Some were built for storage. Others carried fresh water throughout the palace. Long vaulted corridors connected different sections of the complex, while hidden staircases disappeared below ground level. Together, they formed a network that was surprisingly sophisticated for its time. Walking through them even today, it's easy to understand how someone unfamiliar with the palace could quickly lose their sense of direction. One of the most remarkable features is the use of corbelled vaulting. Instead of true arches, Minoan builders carefully stacked layers of stone so that each course projected slightly inward until the roof could be closed at the top. The result was a strong, stable tunnel capable of supporting the enormous weight above. Many of these passages have survived earthquakes, changing climates, and thousands of years of history. Their durability continues to impress modern engineers. The underground spaces also reveal something equally remarkable. The Minoans understood water better than almost any civilization of their age. Stone channels carried rainwater away from important buildings. Clay pipes supplied fresh water throughout parts of the palace. Drainage systems removed wastewater with surprising efficiency. Some of these engineering solutions would not become common again in Europe for many centuries. Hidden beneath the palace, a complex infrastructure quietly supported everyday life above ground. Most visitors never realize it exists. Of course, no discussion of Knossos is complete without mentioning the labyrinth. According to ancient Greek mythology, King Minos ordered the construction of an enormous maze beneath his palace to imprison the fearsome Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull. The hero Theseus eventually entered the maze, guided by a single thread, and escaped after defeating the beast. It's one of the most famous stories from the ancient world. But did the legend begin here? Many historians think it might have. The Palace of Knossos contains hundreds of interconnected rooms spread across multiple levels. Long corridors twist through the complex. Staircases unexpectedly rise and descend. Storage galleries extend deep beneath the main courtyards. Without a guide, the palace would have been incredibly confusing to navigate. Early visitors from mainland Greece may have struggled to understand its layout. Over generations, those memories may have evolved into stories of an impossible maze hidden beneath the palace. Not because a monster truly lived there, but because the architecture itself felt almost endless. Even today, archaeologists continue studying parts of the underground complex. Some passages remain inaccessible. Others were damaged by earthquakes that struck the palace long before it was finally abandoned. Every excavation reveals another detail about how the Minoans designed one of the most advanced architectural complexes of the Bronze Age. Yet many questions remain unanswered. How many underground passages have yet to be discovered? Did every tunnel serve a practical purpose? Or were some reserved for sacred ceremonies known only to the palace elite? The answers remain buried beneath centuries of history. Standing among the ruins today, it's easy to focus on the grand columns and open courtyards glowing beneath the Cretan sun. But below your feet, another palace still exists. A hidden world of vaulted corridors, carefully engineered tunnels, and silent chambers that once formed the unseen foundation of Minoan life. Perhaps these underground spaces were simply practical solutions created by brilliant engineers. Perhaps they inspired one of the greatest legends ever told. Or perhaps they served purposes that have completely vanished with time. Whatever the truth may be, the vaulted tunnels under Knossos remind us that some of history's greatest mysteries are not found inside magnificent temples or royal tombs. Sometimes, they lie quietly beneath them, hidden in the darkness, waiting for curious minds to descend below the surface and follow the ancient passages wherever they may lead. The broken causeway of Girsu. Long before the first pharaoh ruled Egypt, long before Rome was even imagined, one of humanity's earliest cities was already rising from the plains of southern Mesopotamia. Its people built temples from mud brick. They recorded their lives on clay tablets. They organized governments, developed writing, and created one of the world's first great civilizations. Today, that forgotten city is known as Girsu, and scattered across its ancient ruins lies the broken remains of a roadway that has quietly puzzled archaeologists for generations. A causeway, carefully constructed thousands of years ago, that once connected some of the most important places in the city. Now, it ends in silence, broken by time. Its destination, still uncertain. Girsu flourished more than 4,000 years ago as one of the major cities of the ancient Sumerians. At its height, it was a place of remarkable activity. Priests moved between sacred temples. Merchants arrived carrying goods from distant lands. Scribes pressed wedge-shaped symbols into wet clay, recording everything from royal decrees to everyday transactions. Life flowed through the city with extraordinary organization. Nothing was built without purpose. Even the roads reflected careful planning. Among the most intriguing discoveries is the remains of a raised stone and mud brick causeway that once crossed part of the ceremonial district. Unlike ordinary paths worn into the earth by generations of footsteps, this was a deliberately engineered route. It connected important buildings, guided movement through the sacred heart of the city, and may have played a central role during religious processions that brought together priests, rulers, and ordinary citizens. Today, only fragments remain. Large sections have disappeared beneath thousands of years of buried earth. Others simply stop, leaving archaeologists wondering what once continued beyond them. The causeway wasn't built for speed. It was built for significance. Researchers believe important ceremonies may have followed this elevated route during festivals dedicated to the city's patron god, Girsu. Imagine the scene more than 4 millennia ago. The streets filled with people, incense drifting through the warm air, musicians leading slow processions, priests carrying sacred objects toward the great temple. The causeway wasn't merely a road. It was part of a carefully choreographed journey through one of the oldest cities on Earth. Excavations have revealed that the builders understood their environment remarkably well. Southern Mesopotamia was shaped by rivers that frequently flooded the surrounding plains. Ordinary pathways could quickly disappear beneath mud and water. A raised causeway provided a stable route connecting the city's most important buildings even during difficult seasons. It was practical, but its careful construction suggests it also held symbolic importance. Sacred spaces often required carefully defined approaches. Every step toward the temple may have carried meaning. Yet the greatest mystery remains. Where did the missing sections lead? Modern excavations have uncovered only portions of the original roadway. Other sections lie beneath layers of later construction. Some may have been destroyed as the city changed over centuries. Others could still remain buried beneath unexplored parts of the site. Every excavation reveals another short stretch, another carefully prepared surface, another reminder that much of ancient Girsu still waits beneath the ground. Recent archaeological work has transformed our understanding of the city. Using satellite imagery, drones, and detailed excavation, researchers have mapped streets, neighborhoods, canals, and monumental buildings that had been hidden for thousands of years. Each discovery adds another piece to the ancient city's layout. The broken causeway has become one of those important pieces, not because it is the largest monument, but because it helps explain how people moved through one of the world's earliest urban landscapes. Sometimes, a simple road can tell us just as much as a palace. Girsu itself still holds countless unanswered questions. Much of the ancient city remains buried beneath the Mesopotamian plain. New discoveries continue to emerge almost every excavation season. Clay tablets reveal forgotten names. Temples appear beneath the soil. Walls, courtyards, and workshops slowly return to the light after lying hidden for more than 4,000 years. The broken causeway is only one small part of that much larger story, but it reminds us that even ordinary structures can survive long enough to challenge modern understanding. Today, the winds sweep gently across the ruins of Girsu. The temples have long since collapsed. The processions ended thousands of years ago. Only fragments of the ancient roadway remain, stretching across the earth before disappearing beneath the soil once again. Perhaps future excavations will uncover the missing sections. Perhaps they will reveal another temple waiting beyond the end of the road. Or perhaps the final destination has already been lost forever. Whatever the answer, the broken causeway of Girsu reminds us that history is not made only of kings and monuments. Sometimes, it survives in the roads people walked every day. Paths that connected communities, guided ceremonies, and quietly witnessed the birth of civilization itself. Even after 4,000 years, that ancient road still invites us to ask one final question. Where did it once lead, and what still waits at the other end?